All right, welcome everybody, and let's start our Bible study with a word of prayer. Dear God, we give you thanks once again for this day that you've given us. This day that we have been blessed, this day that we've had opportunities to bless others. We ask as we come to this evening time in this study that you'll open our hearts and our ears. Open your word to us that we may learn more of you and grow closer to you in the way that you want. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So hopefully most of you have heard, listened to, or been here while we've gone through chapters 1, 2, and 3. And we've learned about, let's see, what are the different sources that are part of, and we talked about the Genesis is an oral tradition, and there were different sources. So what were the different sources that are part of the Old Testament?
You mean the different storytellers?
Yeah, the different storytellers.
Okay. Well, there's J, that was Yahweh,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
And E, Elohim,
Right.
D, Deuteronomy, yeah.
E for
Oh,
Deuteronomy.
yeah. And P for priestly.
Okay. So these are different oral traditions that came down. Now, today we're going to get into some kind of wild stuff. So I want you to keep thinking. It's really important that we think about the oral tradition. That this was just something that had been passed down, that you sit around, we talk, I get you that picture sitting around the campfire at night telling stories. And these are the traditions. So that's really important to remember as we come through this. Not that anything is false, but there's lots of reasons to tell stories. And I'm going to start out with telling you a story from American history. Now, we know that George Washington was an honest person. Do we know why we know that?
Cut down the cherry tree.
He cut down a cherry tree. Okay, now I'm not going to tell you any more about the story. You all know the rest of the story. Anybody that doesn't know the rest of the story? He cut down the cherry tree, and what happened?
He couldn't lie about it.
Okay, Father, I can't tell a lie. Okay, but we just said we know George Washington is an honest person. You all knew that story. All right, so we're going to go back to that. So we're starting today. Last week we kicked Adam and Eve out of the garden. And they are living someplace else where it's harder than ever to work because they have broken the relationship with God. God's still merciful to them. God's still loving them, but just going, can't have you in the garden anymore. And just for a little sideline, who's guarding the garden to make sure they don't go back in?
Oh, those cute little
Those
angel
cherubs.
The cherub. Okay, good. I want to show you this, just a reminder. I looked this up just specially. Okay, see if I can get this. Oh, okay. Can you see that?
Lovely.
Oh, I see enough of it. Yeah, thanks.
Oh dear.
That'll give me nightmares tonight.
All right. So remember, the cherub is not a little angel; it's a fearsome beast. Just when I'm just wait till Valentine's Day gets here. Okay. They're not in the garden anymore. We have the broken relationship. We have God killing an animal to make skins for them. It's off they go. So Adam and Eve are out. So now starts the next chapter, chapter 4. So someone read 1 and 2.
Chapter 4. Then Adam had intercourse with his wife, and she became pregnant. She bore a son and said, By the Lord's help, I have gotten a son. So she named him Cain. Later, she gave birth to another son, Abel. Abel became a shepherd, but Cain was a
Okay, so we've got these two boys, and they have different professions. And it was interesting, this commentary I said was the tone of this was Eve's word should be translated, I have created a man as well as the Lord, not with the Lord's help. So it's saying there is a play on words between kanini, I don't know it, or I've gotten, obtained, created, made, and Cain, the Hebrew word for Cain. The word Qayn apparently meant a kind of spear, but that does not seem to interest the author. He has something else in mind. The preposition which he attaches to the Lord is very odd. It is literally with, which could be stretched or rendered with the help of, as in the RS Revised Standard Version or other versions. But in my view, he wants us to take exactly the opposite view of it. Eve has just been thrown out of the garden, and her cry at her son's birth is intended to be exultant and arrogant rather than pious. She will show God, not for her, the thought of him alone giving life. She can do it too. Interesting little take on that. I don't know. What do other translations, anybody else, if you're reading a different translation, it says,
This
I've gotten
one's-
a man with the help of the Lord. Anybody
This
else?
one's, yeah, this one says, for as she said, with God's help, I have created a man.
Okay. Anybody else have a different one?
It's the same.
Okay. So I don't know if I always agree with this author. I like the New Testament books. I think were better. They were a different author. This one gets a little wild sometimes, but interesting to think about, because maybe she was going, see here, I can do this.
For the numbers. Oh,
Right. So now we've got Cain and Abel, and they have different professions because now they have to work. They're just not in the Garden of Eden having a good time, just happily watering plants, and they grow great. So let's go from verse 3 through, let's see, where's the next one? 3 through 7.
I can do that.
Thank you.
In the course of time, Cain brought forth some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of the flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering, he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry and his face was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it."
Okay.
I don't know.
I don't understand.
Okay. Why
Okay.
didn't Cain bring something that pleased the Lord?
Well, why would he what he brought didn't make, I don't understand why that didn't make the Lord happy. It's what he grew.
Okay. Why didn't he make something that pleased the Lord? Because he wasn't able.
Oh.
Gotta get-
All right
All
now.
right.
I'm
All right.
sorry.
Recorded.
That's recorded for all time and posterity. Oh, look who's covering the camera. Okay, so here comes why we have this. I told the story of George Washington at the beginning. The next few chapters that we're going to read, we're getting snippets of the stories that maybe at the first writing, the people that were listening knew all the other details of the story. So you only have to say, we know that George Washington was an honest president because we know the story from his childhood, and you all knew it. So this is not the full story. We have no idea what Cain did wrong. But the one who wrote it down, this is, I think, from the J voice. This one, it doesn't really, the point is not what he made that wasn't acceptable. The point was his reaction.
Mm.
Because we don't know. We have no way of knowing. We can speculate a lot, but nobody knows. Because it's not there. It's a piece of the story. But the point is that God gets to decide, and we don't know the mind of God, so we have to accept. That's the point of the story. Cain goes, well, that's no fair. Why did you like his and not mine? God says, my choice. I can decide. What's your reaction going to be?
Well, if we don't know all that had gone on before, we don't know but what God might have said.
You don't.
I desire a blood sacrifice.
That's what some people had said.
And then that's what I've always heard, you know, and that Cain took the easy way out. I don't know, you know, I don't know. That's what I've always heard that, but we don't, but it's interesting that you say we don't know what's gone on, because that's what it looks like, you know.
We don't know, but the whole point of the story
Right.
is that we don't have to know. And so the person that's writing this down thought, I don't have to write that down because that's not the important point. The important point is what we do with when things hand to us, when things that we don't like are handed to us in life. And why is it not fair? Have you ever felt that? It's not fair. We don't have fair times. And so when we're playing God, this isn't fair, this isn't fair, then we go off and say, well, I don't like what God did. So does that give us free reign to do whatever we want if we disagree with God?
No.
See, that's the point of the story. So Cain is mad that God didn't like what he did. Whatever reason God had, Cain was mad. So see, that takes the whole focus off of trying to figure out what it is that Cain did that was wrong. And it takes the focus on what was Cain's reaction. So what kind of things happen to us in life that aren't fair? Some of us lose a child. And I know some of you know. That's not fair. How come that happened to me and not someone else? And then what's our reaction? And I don't know. I haven't walked in those shoes, and I know it's terrible. But what's our reaction then? What do we do? So this is the next part of the story. So Cain's mad, and now we go to the next section, which is 8 through 16. If someone would like to read that.
I can. Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
Who else spoke? Go ahead. Okay. Then Cain said to his brother Abel, let's go out in the fields. When they were out in the fields, Cain turned on his brother and killed him. The Lord asked Cain, where is your brother Abel? He answered, I don't know. Am I supposed to take care of my brother? Then the Lord said, why have you done this terrible thing? Your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground like a voice calling for revenge. You are placed under a curse and can no longer farm the soil. It has soaked up your brother's blood as if it had opened its mouth to receive it when you killed him. If you try to grow crops, the soil will not produce anything. You will be a homeless wanderer on the earth. And Cain said to the Lord, this punishment is too hard for me to bear. You are driving me off the land and away from your presence. I will be a homeless wanderer on the earth, and anyone who finds me will kill me. But the Lord answered, no, if anyone kills you, 7 lives will be taken in revenge. So the Lord put a mark on Cain to warn anyone who met him not to kill him. And Cain went away from the Lord's presence and lived in a land called Wandering, which is east of Eden.
Okay. Cain didn't deal well with the rejection, did he?
No.
And see, there's the point. So if you're sitting around the campfire and you're telling a story, and you say, sometimes we don't like the things that God does, but it's not our choice to decide what God likes and what God doesn't, and to question God. So this is what happens. So Cain is so angry, he kills his brother, premeditated, had it completely picked out ahead of time. And now, what happened? I'm getting an echo. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hearing
we can.
Let me turn my computer. I think I got.
bothering you
volume
probably
down.
more than us.
Okay, are you getting the echo now? No. Okay. All right. So Cain kills his brother, and now this whole thing. This is a whole. I want you to think about The Godfather. Okay, who's ever watched? I haven't ever watched. I don't think I've ever watched.
I haven't either.
Just seen bits and pieces of it.
Tom
Okay.
knows the whole
What do you want to know?
script.
What happens when somebody kills somebody's brother?
Then there's a revenge.
The revenge thing. And it goes around, and you have to. It's a whole matter of pride and whole family honor. You have to go out and avenge the death of that person and that family. And if you don't go out and kill the one who killed your brother, if you don't take that responsibility on, then the families are going to start feuding for generations. So you have to do that. So here's God calling out for justice, is saying, you killed your brother. The ground is calling out. Now, this is an interesting take from this commentary. Now, who is the God of death in the Hebrew religion?
Who is the God of death in the Hebrew religion?
Where's my phone?
She's asking.
Here's the
Who
answer.
is the God
There
of
isn't
death
one.
in the Hebrew religion?
Okay,
Question.
because other cultures around that time had gods of death, like Hades.
Mhm.
Hades is the god of the underworld in the either Greek or Roman. But there is no god of the underworld or god of death. There's a place of death called Sheol. And so this is like the dirt in the ground. So the ground now is acting as this god of death. And the ground is calling out for vengeance for Abel. So there we've got this. And now Cain is going, but this is too much. Now the commentary says that Cain's reaction really was, I have done something so bad that I deserve death, and everybody is going to be out looking for me because they have to avenge my death.
Sorry, I know.
So
Now, who's the they?
that's my question.
Uh-huh.
Where did they come from?
Okay. Now, if we want to be literalist with the Bible, which I'm not saying is anything wrong, how many children did Adam and Eve have?
3.
3, yeah.
3 that are listed,
Right.
but it said they had many other sons and daughters. So there's this, and how long did Adam live? We're going to find that out in a little bit. Anybody know?
862 years.
Close, 932, I think. So that's a
Good
long
head, and I still
time.
learn.
So if they had all these children, there would be children, and then there would be nieces and nephews. There would be this whole clan. The Cain and Abel story doesn't tell us any place in the timeline when this happened.
Mm.
So if he killed Abel, Cain killed Abel, the rest of the family then was obliged to kill him, to make vengeance for his death.
Okay.
So Cain says, I'm going to die. I deserve to die. I know they're going to be looking for me. And this is what's really amazing. And what is God's response?
That, if you get killed, then others will die.
How many?
7.
7. God said, I'm going to avenge you 7 times, 7 times. So even though Cain has done this horrible thing, killed his brother, God is still merciful to him.
Yeah, but that's merciful to him. He's supposed to feel good that 7 others will die, but he'll die as well.
No, well, it's just saying that I'm going to protect you. He's saying, I'm going to put this mark on you to let others know that if they kill you, I'm going after them. So it's my protection on you. Even though you've done a terrible thing, I still have mercy and I still care about you. I can't
Okay.
let you stay where you are. You're going to have to suffer your own choices, but I'm still going to protect you. So
Now,
God, from the very beginning, shows that God is mercy. And then
Something that
Cain,
I've never understood with all of this Cain and Abel and children. There's Adam and Eve, and they had Cain and Abel. Where did the
and a whole
women
bunch of
come?
other ones, but go ahead.
Right. So they're marrying brothers and sisters
Yeah.
to propagate the earth, with people. And I've never in all the religious courses and all I took in school, I've never ever heard it mentioned that you didn't hear of birth defects or mentally challenged and all these things that we have nowadays. So
Okay.
it seems to me that that's basically incest. That word's not even brought up, but in some way, God must have been protecting all of these children so that the earth would have a populace.
Okay. Well, let's go back. Why do birth defects occur if you have children with someone too closely related to you? Who knows the science
genetics,
of that?
DNA, the chromosomes.
Okay, it's because there's mutations that you may have. My brother may have. Our family may have some mutation to our DNA that if we marry together, that mutation will take over. So let's go way, way back to the original creation.
They were pretty pure.
The mutations haven't had time to set in yet.
Okay.
They were
It
pretty
takes
fresh.
generations. I mean, one person can have a mutation of some kind. I know Claire is a biologist. Am I getting close to explaining this? I know you have a science.
You are.
What?
You are.
Okay, good. You correct me if I'm not. So it takes generations and generations for that mutation. So if you're right at the beginning of creation, there just aren't these
Right.
mutations. Later on, when we get into Moses and we get the 10 Commandments, then God sends the rules. You can't marry your sister. You can't marry this person because there's much more. The gene pool has gotten much more corrupt over the course of time.
And that's what I understand. I just had never heard it addressed, so I wanted to ask the question.
Okay.
But
If
that
you look at dogs, they'll breed for a certain color or a certain fur. And if they breed too much inbreeding, the mutation comes out and you have a worthless dog. So it's like that. It's after so many generations, it's like the virus, the COVID.
Right.
Okay.
right.
It has mutated now to be stronger and harder to control than it did 2 or 3 years ago. So that's why you need boosters and immunizations.
Okay, so that's.
Try to control that mutation.
Mhm.
Interesting.
So right off the bat, in the early, when population is very small, there's just not that many mutations. So
Yeah,
if we look at that, that's a story, because we know that groups had to do inbreeding because it was a very small population. They couldn't have gone, and small tribes couldn't have traveled far. There's inbreeding. But now that we have much more gene pool and we've had longer time for mutation. So yeah, so Cain, maybe he could have married a niece. Because there's a
Right.
long time period, if we take the 900 years as literal.
Gus.
Not there.
So there's Cain. So now the rest of the family, he doesn't want the rest of the family to come out and get him. So now he's gone out into this land. My translation says the land of Nod. Has nothing to do with winking, blinking, and Nod. The thing here, it says that he has to go into the field, into the place of his own devices. He is banished to go where he's chosen to go. He has
What verse and chapter is that?
This is verse 8, chapter 4, verse 16. Kay read that it was in the land of wandering.
Okay.
All right. So Cain is out, and this is and some people think this is the definition of hell. Is not a place, but merely a choice to be away from God in the absence of the presence of God. So Cain, by his own choices, had to choose to be away from these people that wanted to kill him because he deserved it, and he has to leave the presence of God and dwell in that land.
So all these people had to have just been pretty close relatives.
That would be if we're looking, yes. But we have to think at the beginning of humanity, it had to have been.
Mhm.
No matter whether you want to look at through purely scientific or whether you want to look at through the Bible, there's no getting around that they had to be closely related. And if David was here, he's out playing a gig tonight or a rehearsal. He said that there's this book, it's called The Seven Daughters of Eve. And people, the scientists have genetically related everyone to one place in Africa.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Genetically, we really did all come from the same roots.
They just did something that I was listening to on that, addressing that, and it had to do with the Neanderthal man. And they said that I was sharing that with you the other day, Molly, that
Yep.
that we all have a genetic link to the Neanderthal man, and there's a pocket of people that do not, and they come out of Africa.
Mhm.
Hmm.
The Neanderthal were north, and so all of us Europeans, get our good eyebrow ridge going, we have Neanderthal blood in us.
And really, reading this, you don't know how old Cain was at the time.
That's right. There's no.
If they lived so long,
I just had a thought. It doesn't happen very often. Yeah, but verse 16, and Cain went away from the Lord's presence and lived in a land called Wandering, which is east of Eden. Those of you old enough, you remember the movie with James Dean, East of Eden?
Mhm.
Great movie, Rural Lives and
It's a troubling movie.
I'll bet that title came from verse 16. What do
Probably,
you
I
think?
would imagine.
Betcha.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, I think.
Observant.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Took you a while.
The rest of us knew that when we were toddlers,
And
but
Mary's gonna spit at us.
okay, yeah.
It's a
Lot-
close
lot
call.
Here's a little side thing. My sister Ruth is helping to teach a woman from China working on her English.
Ooh,
And she says one of the hardest things for her is that so much of our culture is based on Christianity
Yeah.
and it references to the Bible. She said it's when you talk to somebody who has no Bible background at all, being raised in China and nothing, she said there is so much of our culture. And there's just an example for you right there,
Yeah.
based on something from the Bible. So much. So anyway, there's that. All right, so Cain is out wandering. Do you think that would be a little bit helping us understand the Bedouins, the wanderers? There they are in the desert lands where they can't really grow anything. They were then back then too. So this is setting our course for the whole rest of humanity, who we are even today. All right, so we understand. We don't know why God didn't accept Cain's sacrifice, but that's not the important part. The important part was Cain's reaction to what God decided. And so that's the point we're supposed to take away from this story. When we're not happy with what God does, do we have a right to complain? Do we have a right to get angry? Do we have a right to seek vengeance? Apparently not, because Cain was the one that received the punishment of all, having to live away from it. All right, let's see if but God is still merciful. So now let's read some more wild stuff. I want to read through, let's see. Let's go from 17 through 22 first. Chapter 4, 17 through 22.
Nobody wants to do it because there's a bunch of names in there.
A lot of names.
I'll give it a shot.
Okay.
Yay.
Cain and his wife had a son and named him Enoch. Then Cain built a city and named it after his son. Enoch had a son named Irad, who was the father of, that guy, and
Mahuja.
who had a son named Methuselah.
Methuselah.
That's not that one in my book. Who was the father of Lamech. Lamech had two wives, Ada and Zillah. Well, I just
Go ahead.
Zillah.
Go ahead. Just read it.
Where was I? Zillah. Ada gave birth to Jabal, who was the ancestor of those who raise livestock and live in tents. His brother was Jubal, the ancestor of all musicians who play the harp and the flute and the saxophone. Zillah gave birth to Tubal, Cain, who made all kinds of tools out of bronze and iron. The sister of Tubal, Cain, was Naamah.
Okay, good
Is that
job.
Is that the Tom Revised Standard Version there?
Yeah, mine doesn't say saxophone in it.
I'm not quite sure about the saxophone.
That's Tom humor.
I thought David had a resemblance to Jubal.
That means that Cain would have been his great grandfather or something.
There you go.
That's it.
Okay. So we've got Cain with his wife. Now, did he find his wife in the land of Nod, in this land of wandering?
Must be.
Wait a minute.
We don't know. Do
We don't know. It doesn't give the, once again, we don't have the timeline.
Mm-mm.
I don't see anything.
We don't have
Doesn't
the,
give her-
Right from he went up.
he
No,
might have had the wife before he left.
maybe.
It doesn't give her name either, does it?
It doesn't give her name either, but we don't know. And I mean, maybe the wife went with him.
Huh.
We don't know.
Maybe he had more than one wife.
It doesn't say so, but this goes back to, if we're looking at it, had to have been from the tribe where he was, from these original small gene pool. So there he had the wife. And now, do you see what this next section is? Remember, you're sitting around the campfire, you're having these stories, and you want to know the origins, where you came from. All right, now how many of you have a similar career to somebody, one of your ancestors?
Similar
Catherine?
what?
A similar career to one of your ancestors?
My grandmother was a piano teacher.
Okay, so was mine.
Hey,
Okay, Catherine, you're muted, Catherine.
Well, I'm a third generation educator.
Okay. Anybody else? But Mary.
Oh, administrative, secretarial type work.
Okay. You see, a lot of times in families, you have this, and I
Yeah.
have many teachers in my background, and I also have pastors. And that's kind of my background, are teachers and pastors, and I couldn't choose, so I was both. But you're sitting around saying, okay, so where did this come from? Where did this come from? So as you're sitting around there and they're going, well, Cain was a builder. He was an architect. And these other ones, what were they? We have the nomads, the ones who were farmers, the ones that were cattle ranchers. We have the musicians. We have the blacksmith.
Inventor.
And you know what? What does that tell us about human beings in regard to the rest of creation?
We diversified.
We diversified, and we are different than animals. We don't just survive. We have arts. We have the first artists, the forgers of instruments of bronze and iron. These aren't essentials. These are not subsistent farmers. These are not people that are just hunter-gatherers. We have arts. This is the introduction to say human beings are not just beings that survive. We have more to life than just actual survival. It's getting us right from the beginning, all of these people. So you didn't realize that God created human beings to be the artists right off the bat. We've got artists in the beginning. All right, we're going to go to this guy, Lamech, next. Lamech is not a really nice guy. So someone would read, Lamech said to his wives, and that will go for 23 through 24. It's 23 and 24.
Lamech said to his
Chapter?
wives, Ada and Zillah, listen to me, you wives of Lamech, hear me out. I killed a man for wounding me, a young man who attacked me. If Cain is avenged 7 times, for Lamech is 77.
Okay. What do you take about
What
this?
chapter was that?
23 and 24. This is a very odd little piece of poetry.
What chapter?
What was that, Dottie?
Chapter
What
4.
chapter?
Oh, chapter 4. We're in chapter 4.
Thank you.
Okay. And that's 23 and 24.
Well, how does he think he has the authority to say that?
Yeah, where's that come from?
Okay, remember these, this is where we see again, we've got a snippet of a story. We've got the generations and we don't know what went on, but it just said, wow, this guy is a son of Cain. Let's see, how many generations is he from Cain?
No more. Enoch,
There's Cain, then there's Enoch,
Enoch,
and Enoch has Mehujael and
Oh, wait a minute.
Methuselah, and then Lamech. So 5
How
generations.
about that I read? Enoch was the
There's
father of
7.
Ired,
Oh,
who
I
was a
forgot I
father.
read. Yep, okay.
Yeah.
So we've got, so Enoch is this Cain,
1, 2,
Enoch, Ired,
4,
Mehujael,
5,
Methuselah, and Lamech.
6.
6 generations down. So that's again, just this little piece of the story, just very violent. We don't know why it's there. He's just saying, don't mess with me.
Mhm.
You're going to be avenged. I'm going after you. Come after me because I am one tough son of a gun.
Just listening.
Yeah. I thought I was going to say something else.
Oh, no. You're being recorded.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
Okay. All right. So Lamech, let me see if I got anything. And you know, after this story, we're going to go, after all the stories, we're going to go right into the story of Noah. Is going to be the next major story. And so we're getting a glimpse of how violent and how awful the people were. So this is the end of the J branch of this part of the story. You're going to see now that we're going to go into another voice. Now this one is said, I think this is P voice, the prophet voice. And this starts on verse 25 and it's going to go right in through the next. Nope, actually no. This is just the very end of this voice, the end of the chapter. So if we can read 25 and 26 of chapter 4.
Adam had sexual.
Adam lay with his wife again, and she gave birth to a son and named him Seth, saying, God has granted me another child in place of Abel, since Cain killed him. Seth also had a son, and he named him Enoch. Enosh. At that time, men began to call on the name of the Lord.
Okay. So now we got the little history of Cain and all Cain's descendants. We've got 6 generations. And then we go back to Adam and Eve. And now God is showing the mercy again to say, all right, I'm going to give you another son. And so now we have the birth of Seth. And who is the child of the future generation of the Hebrews? Who is the one that carries? Who's the child, the heir? Who is the heir of Adam and Eve? That the genealogy will be traced through.
Jesus.
Enoch.
Well, to Jesus, but
Oh, to Jesus. Okay.
who's the beginning? We've got Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve are the first. Then we have who's the next one in line in the genealogy?
Well, let's see.
Abel?
Cain.
It's not
Cain?
Cain.
Abel?
Abel had no children.
He was killed. Yeah.
Right. So it's Seth.
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 Yeah,
Seth
because-
is the one that is the
From
one
Adam
listed in the
yes.
genealogy. So if you go into, let's see, I think it's,
What about all these others?
they're just there for information. So look in, I think it's Matthew chapter 1.
Well,
Nope, I don't think
it
that.
looks like it starts with Abraham.
Yeah, Matthew said, I think it must be Luke then. Because Luke was for the marginalized people, if we'll remember way back to that study.
Matthew Witt.
Luke gives the genealogy. And I'm gonna look to see what chapter it's in.
Oh boy, I found it's in chapter 4.
Okay,
Ah,
chapter 4. Chapter 3, the end of chapter 3.
3.
Okay, so look at the very last verse of chapter 3. Luke,
ah,
chapter 3.
and that's the genealogy of Joseph, isn't it?
Jesus.
That's a genealogy of Jesus.
But yeah, but he says he was. the
Oh, it's
son
they're
or
doing
so
it backwards.
They're doing it backwards, yes.
Backwards. It ends with Adam and Seth. Okay.
But does it
Enoch, son of Seth, son of Adam, son of God.
so does it lead though Mary or Joseph? Because it looks like Joseph.
Yeah, it says Joseph there. There's a whole bunch of that, but yeah, that's the son of Joseph.
You know, we
Which he's
studied
not
this.
really the son of anyways.
Good.
So that's a story for another day. But I was pointing out Seth was the one I wanted you to see.
Yeah.
That's
Are we
Seth.
chasing rabbits?
That we've got Cain was the eldest, so it's not always the eldest, which throws out this idea that it has to be the eldest. Because let's look at some other famous ones throughout history, because we're going to go through some others in Genesis. Is there another time where somebody who wasn't the eldest son got to be the heir?
Mm-hmm.
David,
You think of anyone?
David,
There's a good one. David was in that line. He was like the 12th son. He was way or 7th. He was the 7th. He was way down the line. Okay, somebody else,
The twins where the brothers stole the birthright from
right?
the older one for a bowl of soup.
Who's that?
Well, my old brain is not bringing it right forward right this moment.
Jacob and Esau.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Esau was the eldest. Jacob actually became the name bearer of the whole country of Israel because he had his name changed to Israel. And that's where the name came. So there's another one. So this long line, if it's not the eldest one, it's necessarily the one in line. All right. So we've got in this chapter, so to recap, we have what happens, the story that we're told is what happens to you if you don't respect what happens in your life, even if you're not happy to it. Your reaction to it is more important than what God does. All right, that's number one. And then we see that God is merciful from the very beginning, that even though Cain kills his brother, God is still protecting him. Even though he deserves to be killed, God puts a protection on him. And then we see the idea of revenge that's in the culture, that's there, but is not acted on. So Cain is kicked out to the land of Nod, but his life isn't over. We have him having having 6 generations. Cain keeps going. So God is merciful. God is merciful, and even through Cain, we have all these people where we see the first artists coming from. Therefore, the idea that no God-fearing woman should ever marry a musician is probably true.
Oh, no. Too late for me.
That's why I played the tuba.
Play the tuba, yeah. Think about it. Who wants their child to marry a musician? I mean, because musicians are always, or artists are always starving artists, and No, I totally wrong. I may have to cut that out before I upload the recording. But anyway, seriously, that we see that we're set apart from the animals because we have arts. Even here, right in the 4th chapter of Genesis, we have the arts that are coming about. And this is what God has created, people to be separated from the animals.
And what about that last line?
And
It was
at that, okay, again, then we would just let me get there, because now we have evil. We see that depth of evil through Lamech, and then we got through the line of Seth, and that's where Noah comes. Was Noah? No, actually. Anyway, at that time, people began to worship the Lord's name.
This one says when men first began to call themselves the Lord's people.
Okay. So they're turning back. God's kicked them out, but they haven't walked out of God's presence. They've left the Garden of Eden, but God is still there. God hasn't abandoned them through all of this. So there's the story of chapter 4. The next week, we're going to go through this almost the same genealogy, but we're going to find out that it's through a different voice. It'll be very clear that this one is a different oral tradition that's come down. Okay.
Okay.
So any questions or comments?
Questions?
So why then again did Cain not produce works that were pleasing to God?
We don't know.
I don't know.
No, because he wasn't able.
Oh,
Yes, true. Oh, gosh.
oh,
yes.
walked right into that one. Oh, Molly, you need a nap.
Trying to teach you. Okay. Well, are you seeing the little snippets of the stories? Are you seeing the different voices that are coming out and how the oral traditions are put together?
Yeah.
And we're going to see some more really wild stuff when we get into chapter 6. I think it's 6. Yeah.
5 was pretty wild with all those ages.
Yeah. But chapter 6 is going to be one of the weirdest verses in the whole Bible, I think. That's going to entice you to read it.
Well, in my book, the title is Wickedness in the World.
Ah, there we go.
Ah,
Yeah.
In
All
the
right.
messenger, it's giants in the land.
Yeah. So you just, we're not going to go there yet. Just for intrigue.
you're just teasing us, right?
I'm just teasing you. Okay.
And that's for next time?
What?
5 and 6. What's for next time then?
Well, definitely 5, and we may get, I think we'll probably get into 6, because 5 is just more of a genealogy.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
So 5 and 6. Okay, I'm going to turn off the recording.